We'll hear a bit of the individual stories. We'll throw some questions around. We'll open up the floor and have a real interactive back and forth.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Entrepreneurship 101, and hello to those of you that are tuning in online. I would also like to give a warm welcome to a group of students tonight who are visiting from Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands. They're sitting right over there. And they're on a discovery research trip to understand why the entrepreneurial culture is so strong in Ontario and Canada. So they've come to attend our Entrepreneurship 101 lecture to learn some more. Tonight's lecture is a new topic that we've introduced to the Entrepreneurship 101 series, and a very valuable topic for our entrepreneurs. It's on contract manufacturing, and the panel tonight is bringing together a group of experienced entrepreneurs as well as contract manufacturers to share their perspectives. And moderating the panel tonight is Lance Laking, who himself is a former CEO of a major hardware manufacturer, BTI Systems. Lance is currently an investment director at the Mars Investment Accelerator Fund, and he has expertise in finance, management, and marketing in the IT, communications, and clean tech industries. And I'd like to say a big thank you to Lance. He's really helped me immensely in pulling together this panel, and it's going to provide you with various very valuable perspectives. So I'm really looking forward to this topic tonight. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marielle, and welcome, everyone. Battling a little bit of weather and suffering the Maple Leafs. I reside up in Ottawa, so I can say that honestly. But welcome again, and really happy to moderate this pretty powerful bench that we'll put up here with perspectives from industry, sort of, the corporate and company perspective, and then also from within the ECM, the electronic contract manufacturing, or sometimes referred to as EMS, electronic manufacturing systems world. And that includes a representative from a big boy, Celestica, and a smaller, more focused sort of niche player in Kangaroo Group. So I'll quickly introduce the participants, and we'll grab our chairs up here, and then I'll just sort of whet our appetites and get some of the thought process around why we want to even talk about contract manufacturing going, and we'll dive right in. So please join me up on stage, everyone, and I'll do introductions from there. So from my far right, first of all, I'd like to introduce Jimmy Chu, and Jimmy is the co-founder and the CEO at Nanoleaf, and he'll talk a little bit more about what Nanoleaf's all about. And just remember, next generation and very creative design of LED lighting products. So that's Jimmy. And next to Jimmy is Mark Borins, and Mark is a co-founder and the CTO at a Toronto-based company, MMB Networks. And MMB Networks is in the module and subsystem manufacturing associated with that big world of home automation, Internet of Things, device control, and that sort of world. So welcome, Mark. And then next to Mark, we've got Sean Blakeney, Senior Director, Global Technology and Innovation at Celestica. And the proud Toronto story connection of Celestica is they are truly one of those global players in the CM world. When you think of Flextronics, when you think of J-Bill, when you think of, say, a little company like Foxconn, Celestica ranks in that esteemed group of companies. So really appreciate you being here, Sean. Thank you. And then wrapping up here on my closest right is Lahav Gill, principal at the Kangaroo Group, and real interesting company that I don't know a lot about, but just perusing and doing a little bit of homework there, where bringing value to all of these innovation going around in the medical devices field, assisting those companies with front-end design, carrying that right through to very sort of focused and special expertise in medical device contract manufacturing. So welcome, Lahav. So please, have a seat, gents, and we'll get rolling here. I think we all know enough about the term contract manufacturing to at least have that basic awareness. When you look at it from a global perspective, it's a big, big market. And it's something in and around $700 billion market with a steady growth rate over the past few years. But it stems back to sort of the dawn of personal computers. And it was at that time, I think, when component builds and printed circuit board layouts became a little bit more standardized, and the OEM manufacturers at the time were looking at ways to outsource some of this manufacturing burden to folks that could, be more specialized and standardized around that. So some of the very first contract manufacturing was focused around PCB and board stuffing. And from there, I think the opportunity to grab more of that basket of manufacturing sort of supply was just a natural extension. And so that, pulled into, we know that stemming back from the semiconductor days, the ability for a company to build its own foundry and, grow its own die and everything has been cost prohibitive for most of all the companies except, the Intels of the world. So that whole concept of fabless semis is something we're all familiar with, and you have major fabless semi players, companies like Xilinx, for example, that have long focused on design and product sort of innovation and outsourced all that manufacturing. So you've got foundry sort of outsourcing. You have the printed circuit board, and printed circuit board activities around that. And then it moved over into electronic assembly and electromechanical assembly. And these contract manufacturers now have all that sort of in their quiver of manufacturing capabilities. But what's interesting is they've even taken on more of that game. And so then getting involved at front-end design services. And then around design services, the test and the certification of things is another challenge that, let's do that too. And then the back end of manufacturing might be, well, if we're building it, let's also get into the distribution game. And so then these major players are doing logistics, distribution, full supply management. And well, if we're doing that, we might as well do repair and returns. And so, okay, we'll do that too. And then, if it's full product life cycle, and we're responsible for, the eventual, cradle to grave sort of life cycle, let's do the ultimate recycling and returns at end of life of the product. So it's a really interesting space on how much the contract manufacturing world has taken on. And I think for the manufacturer, the design company, and startups like we might all be contemplating here, it's a real opportunity to focus on core versus context. And so where's your intellectual property reside? Where do you really add value? Does it make sense for us to be a manufacturer? Let's push all that out and focus on that classic core versus context. And so then there's cost advantages, there's flexibility advantages, and maybe there's an advantage to spend more on marketing or branding and that kind of thing. But there's trade-offs. And the companies, 20 years ago, Nortel built everything. And 15 years ago, Nortel sold all their plants. And 5 years ago, Nortel vaporized. But a lot of the big OEMs have gone through that exact same flight plan. But there's still manufacturers on the planet that have not outsourced, and companies that have not outsourced. And they might be ones where manufacturing is so core to their value proposition that they just don't want to give it away. I think of companies in Switzerland as prime examples of that. I worked for a Swiss-based company for about 8 years, and I was always really intrigued on how such a high labor cost-based country can compete as a manufacturer. And you really have to, study the why around that, and it's high-end product, high value-add manufacturing capability, and very niche-y sort of capabilities that aren't generic to maybe what the contract manufacturers can do for everyone. So I think we'll be able to explore some of those things as we roll here tonight, and it'll be fun. We'll hear a bit of the individual stories and raison d'etre, why they contract manage or manufacturing and why not, and then we'll hear obviously the perspective from Celestica. We'll throw some questions around. We'll open up the floor and have a real interactive back and forth. So welcome again. Thank you.
Thanks.
So we'll go order of operations here rather than flipping a coin. And Jimmy, grab the floor here and tell us about Nanoleaf.
All right. Cool. We prepared some slides for you guys. Hi, everyone. I'm Jimmy Chu. I'm one of the co-founders of Nanoleaf. So at Nanoleaf, we actually create some of the most innovative and energy-efficient lighting products. And I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about who we are, and then I'll show you guys some of the products that we've made so far. So who we are. Nanoleaf was actually founded by 3 University of Toronto graduates. We went to school down the street. We were all part of the U of T solar car team. So I'm not sure if some of you Torontonians have seen this car fully powered off of solar. We were part of that team that designed all the electronics within there. And we've always had a passion for developing energy efficient products. And actually it's about 6 years ago now, in 2009, we got together thinking, how do we take some of that technology and turn it into a product that we could actually sell to the world? So in 2012, after many years of developing different things, we actually came up with the world's most energy efficient light bulb. And I'll show you that in a second. Now we've run about 2 successful Kickstarter campaigns. We have some major investors supporting us. We have a team of about 22 people, and we've sold over 100,000 bulbs. And this is all being manufactured over in Shenzhen, China. We think of that as like the LED capital of the world. So about our products, the first product that we created is the world's most energy efficient light bulb, and it's right here. It uses only 12 watts, and it actually emits even more light than a 100-watt incandescent bulb. So this is really, really bright and really, really energy efficient. To put that into perspective, this is a chart that actually shows you all of the LED products that are being sold right now in North America. So this is all extracted from the Lighting Facts website. And that little green leaf that you see, that's where our light bulb is. So on the x-axis, we have the lumens per watt. On the y-axis, we have the light quality. And as you can see, our bulb is a clear outlier. So this was developed by just 3 guys kind of working on this on their part-time jobs. Since then, of course, we've grown, and we've actually developed a couple more iterations of this product. And let me show you the next product that we have. The next product is the Nanoleaf Bloom. So this is actually a very innovative product. When we were working on this, we already had the world's most energy efficient light bulb, and we thought, how do we make it so that people could save even more energy? What a lot of people don't know is when you dim down your light bulb, you could actually save a significant amount of energy. The problem is, not every light switch is dimmable. So we thought, what if we can make a light bulb that you could dim without a dimmer switch, using a regular on-off light switch. This one is a really cheap lamp. I think it was less than $2 over in China. But when you first turn it on, it takes about 3 seconds to ramp up to full brightness. If you want to dim it down, you just quickly flick the switch off and on, and then it'll slowly dim down. At any point, if you want to lock it in, you just quickly flick the switch off on again, and it'll lock in. If you leave it, it goes into a nice little night mode, and it's a nice little night light that you could have in your bedroom. I use it every night. So I guess this is a forum about manufacturing. So there was a lot of challenges when we had to manufacture this thing. When we designed it, it was purely from a functional perspective. We thought, okay, let's try and make a light bulb that's as economic and and energy efficient, of course, but how do we manufacture this thing? So we actually took a flat circuit board and designed something that you could just fold into the shape of a light bulb. One of the great things about our product is because it's so energy efficient, we didn't need to manufacture a heat sink. So we thought, okay, we're saving a lot of energy by not forcing people to heat up this big block of aluminum and form it into a heat sink. And also the LED chips, we had to custom package them in a way that's a lot more energy efficient than anything else in the market. So what we did was we actually took the whole team and we went over to China and we're like, look, we're just gonna set up shop here because as a hardware company, it's really important to be really close to the manufacturing, right? You can design whatever you want over in the labs, but if you can't make it and mass produce it, it's kind of useless, right? So we thought if we really want to innovate, we have to innovate at the manufacturing level. And we did manage to do that. So this is a video of our manufacturing process. I figured that it would be very valuable for you guys to see. So we actually went into China and we worked really closely with the whole LED manufacturing line to make sure that they were making our LED chips in a way that we were approving. We made sure the materials that they used was really optimized for energy efficiency and also optimized for cost. So this here is an example of a contract manufacturer that specializes in packaging of LEDs. Of course, there's all sorts of manufacturers out there. You got to find the one that's right for you, that's the right size, that has the right mentality, and has the right goals and dreams. Okay, that's everything.
And now for something a little bit different, but still real high tech. Mark, come on up.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I have a few slides prepared as well, but I'll just introduce myself. So as Lance said, my name is Mark Borins. I'm a co-founder of MMB Networks and also an Entrepreneurship 101 alumnus. So about 7 years ago, when I went to start this company with two other co-founders, so I'm the B and the other two M's are my co-founders, we actually attended a whole series of Entrepreneurship 101 lectures. So I just wanted to call out and say now it's sort of 7 years later and everything's come full circle. But with that, I have a few short slides. Not quite up to the level, I think, of Jimmy's awesome video and presentation, but I'll give you guys an intro to what we do. So the easiest way to explain what MMB Networks does is we build technology that helps products connect to the connected home. And whether that's home automation or smart energy applications, the easiest way to describe it is if you've seen ads for Rogers Home Security Systems, or now Comcast has Xfinity Home Security in the States. You may have seen ads, there's Wink for Home Depot, or the Iris platform for Lowe's. There's a sort of burgeoning explosion of all these connected devices, and people kind of call that the Internet of Things or the Internet of Everything. And so what MMB does is we build the radios. Actually, I have some samples, but we'll see them in the slide in a second. We build the radios that actually go into these products and allow them to connect to these networks. And we heavily specialize in the radios and the software, and we help out companies that make thermostats and door locks and lighting products. I mean, some of these companies have been building their products for 50, 60 years. And so this new world of internet connectivity, 2.4 gig networking, security stacks, networking stacks are all new to them. And so that's sort of the value that we bring to the market. So this is just a quick little snapshot of some of the customers that we sell technology and services to. So you can see there's some very innovative startups, all the way to some very big brands like GE, ADT, Lowe's, et cetera. So just give you an idea. And this is exploding. I think if we had everyone on this slide, it would be much bigger as well. So this industry is certainly taking off. So this is a quick slide about some of the products. And so what you can see is we make modules that our customers will integrate inside their products, like a smart plug or perhaps a thermostat. We also build the same module, but in a USB stick form factor that our customers sometimes will plug into existing products or gateways they have, and that will allow them to connect out to a home automation platform. Or on the smart energy side, these radios and modules will allow products to connect to smart meters and understand things like the real-time price of energy, demand response events or demand response programs so they can participate. And it's all about providing a consumer better experience with their product, more information, more features, energy savings, convenience, et cetera. So to tie this all into contract manufacturing, and why I think I'm on the panel this evening, we've been building, at the core of our revenue, we sell these hardware modules. So you can see our Zigbee module. That's one of the core pieces we build by the hundreds of thousands, and it goes in a very wide variety of products. And so in the CTO role, I've sort of supervised the hardware design as well as the contract manufacturing over the 7-year history of MMB. And I also had that similar role at a startup previous to that. So I've been doing this for a little more than a decade now. And so we have experience with small startups that are locally based, small CMs that are locally based, big contract manufacturers that are locally based, as well as overseas manufacturers, both small and large, places like China, also even sort of nearer shore, like in Mexico. And so have a lot of experience working with different manufacturers of different capabilities, sizes, cost bases, specializations, et cetera. So that's my quick little intro.
Great. Thanks, Mark. So now we have a Celestica perspective with Sean.
Yeah, so I'm Sean Blakeney. I'm the Senior Director of Global Technology and Innovation for Celestica. So I have folks that reside in Canada and the US and China, and my role is to look at technology that's emerging and determine where Celestica might want to invest on behalf of our segments and markets and customers that we serve. So that's kind of my focus, and I've pretty much done just about every job inside contract manufacturing, operations, supply chain, IT, control towers, logistics, repair. So they keep bouncing me around. So I give you a bit of a perspective and history, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
Great, thanks. And Celestica is about
it's
$6 billion in top line?
5.6, I think we did last year, $5.6 billion company. Right. Verticals mostly around regulatory and complexity markets, so healthcare, industrial, aerospace and defense, renewable energy, solar, energy storage, communications, enterprise storage, enterprise CPU, data centers. So a lot of, if it's high technology, high value add, high complexity, or has a regulatory implication, high quality, cost of failure is extremely high, things like that. That's our DNA. We emerged out of IBM manufacturing in Canada. That's where we started, here in Toronto. And we disrupted the contract manufacturing market by basically entering the market with a high complexity offering that up until that point, no other contract manufacturer was able to convince any of the high-end markets within IBM and Cisco and others that it could actually be outsourced. So we basically broke the mold and enjoyed a very lucrative valuation on the market for many, many years because of that, because of the high value add we brought. So,
Great. So we'll wrap our intro here with Lahav.
Right, so the short version for Kangaroo is that we are one of the only 2 companies in Canada that do design, development, and building of medical devices, end-to-end turnkey for startups. And the unique expertise to do that for startups is because of the unique circumstance of startups with fluctuating cash flows, requirements still changing whilst you're in production, things moving about, customer development still going on when you're supposed to be shipping product, and learning the knowledge to be able to do medical devices development and then transfer into manufacturing under our ISO certified system for startups is quite unique. We are the product development and contract manufacturing partner behind some of the ventures coming out of Toronto, like Celigis Devices, like FEO, like XOR Labs. And we've also been the industrial design partner behind people like Imris out of Winnipeg, doing intraoperative MRIs, now recently migrated into Minneapolis, so we lost that one. We designed one of the first ultrasonic systems for ultrasonics medical back in the 2002 in Vancouver. We were also one of the first investors in that company that was acquired 2 years ago by Analogic for about $83 million. And I think that's about it. Oh, maybe one more thing to just mention. The term contract manufacturing it's not just one term, it's a very broad term. We have no machinery in the house, so we are more of a final assembly, testing, packaging, shipping of goods with supply chain management, quality management, and everything in the back end, agnostic to fabrication. The story of how we came to be a contract manufacturer is that about 5 years ago, I realized that attaching a contract manufacturing entity seamless to a design entity would offer tremendous value to our clients as they're trying to do that design transfer in this multi-stakeholder kind of situation. We had no knowledge of actual contract manufacturing. We had extensive knowledge of transfer. So we would transfer into people like Gill, like Sanmina. We had the transfer knowledge, but we didn't have the knowledge of how to receive a DMR, a Design Master Record. So I went out and talked with a few friends who happened to own one of the larger contract manufacturers in Israel called Borsuk. We partnered up, agreed to build a contract manufacturing company in Toronto. Based on their knowledge, they transferred the knowledge to us, and we were up and running within a few months. 2 years later, they were acquired by Flextronics, another small company in the ecosystem. And Flextronics, as part of that acquisition, they had to get rid of non-strategic assets. Kangaroo was a non-strategic asset. I got an opportunity to buy back their half at cost, which was fantastic. So now we own KBT Contract Manufacturing fully under Kangaroo.
Nice, great. Just to sort of gauge the cross-section of audience here, and knowing that hardware is the new software, all the excitement around say growth areas like wearables, and wearables extends into all the various medical devices that we're seeing some great innovation around. Just by show of hands, how many folks are either contemplating or involved in a company now that has a hardware or a manufacturing challenge or to-do list? So we've got a few. It's not an overload. I'll say from the hat that I wear now as an investment director doing seed stage investment in companies that all have a strong core IP base. And I think, Mark's company with MMB, and certainly Jimmy, yours with the LED connection. it has a real proprietary sort of core, this is my baby sort of component to this, this capability. And there's always a concern around, around IP and can we really share this, and should I be telling people about this? And it's sort of a secret, and how do you cover and sleep at night with the fact that you're actually divulging some of these very protected core capabilities with a partner?
I think I could kind of help answer that. We've been working in China for the last year, and we have a very unique looking light bulb. And of course, like in China, everyone knows once you start manufacturing something, a couple months later, you're going to see copies out there. And we've actually faced that. And although we have intellectual property filed around the world, you can't avoid people copying your designs, whatever. But at the end of the day, you just have to keep innovating, keep creating new things so that you're always 6 months to a year ahead of the game. I think that's the key thing. And don't worry about people copying you, because ultimately you want to be the first to market, and you want to have something different, and you want to keep coming up with different things. The big players aren't going to copy you because they don't want to have a lawsuit with them. But the little guys, just let them be. Right? And if people are copying you, you should be flattered.
Good. Mark, a perspective from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can certainly echo some of Jimmy's comments in that, yes, someone can always go out and copy you. And in my business, it's, we're starting out in a commoditized business, which is radio modules. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who can buy a piece of silicon and put it on a PCB and have it manufactured. So we've focused very heavily on the embedded software that goes in that piece of hardware. And in fact, we kind of refer to the module as almost like the box that our software comes in. Now we spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in R&D on the hardware, the supply chain, quality, regulatory certification, et cetera, and we make it the best piece of hardware that it can be. But then we add this extra value on top, which is the software, which we stay up to date with all the standards. We're part of a bunch of standards bodies, and we say we come to market with best-in-class hardware, and we really push our value and our competitive advantage with the software. And so in our case, our strategy was to sort of do a hybrid solution where we don't necessarily have to rely. If someone else were to copy our radio module, they wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't have all those extra features like the extra security we have, the very, very wide range of compatibility, and the ability to sort of operate in this new and burgeoning market that people are still trying to catch up to as well. So yeah, focus on where your value is, and like Jimmy said, make sure that if you're always one step ahead, people can copy you, but you'll still have that market lead, that market advantage.
Cool. Or you distribute your products with a software load that's purposely got bugs in it, and then you flash the proper software load at the customer prem. But when I showed up as the founding CEO at BTI, the company was pre-revenue, and I think we had 18 PhDs of physics and pointy-headed white lab coat guys in a clean room, and they were doing fiber Bragg grading on optical tables. And it was photonics-based technology, and we were building erbium-doped fiber amplifiers and all this crazy stuff. And it was really pushing the envelope in terms of the traditional ability for a contract manufacturer to take on. And so we had to go through a big education process with our contract manufacturer, which was originally local to Ottawa, a company called Breckenridge that was acquired by Sanmina SCI. And then we pushed, as our volumes grew, we pushed to Flex down in the Dallas, Texas area. And we explored the China route for our technology and had, we didn't have as good an experience with our outsourcing and outsourced manufacturing over to Asia. It might be, it's different from your perspective, Jimmy, and I think both Lahav and Sean, you would maybe challenge the value proposition that exists, or that perception that to drive cost out, thou shalt go to the Orient to get there. There was a recent Boston Consulting Group survey that came out in the past half year or so that said that differential in cost advantage, or this whole concept of either reshoring manufacturing, the cost delta is now around 5%. So I'd love to hear perspectives from this side as to how does that debate work today when you're a small company and you're thinking about choosing a partner, and do I really have to push it that far away, and what are some of the risks? I'll start with you,
I
Sean.
think I've read the same article, and we're always looking at when and if it makes sense for us to repatriate some of the value add. Clearly, the systems were the last to go because they're the closest to your customer. If a lot of the purchasing is done in North America of high-end systems, then you want to do your last touch close to your customer so you can service for the very short lead time. But what we're noticing too is a lot of the supply chain is now resident in Asia, in the Asian countries, and so your speed to assemble is related to that. So whether you're having finished goods coming over or whether you're sourcing the parts,
Right.
in the end it can be somewhat of a wash, and so you're back to the labor differences and the logistics costs and costs of oil and gas and transport and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, the economics are still biased towards Asia in the end.
Okay.
But you start to factor in non-tangible things, whether that's IP protection as to when you go at the front end, or recycling. There's some laws in countries that don't allow for repatriation of defective goods for repair. There's lots of things that come into play that are not necessarily economic in nature, but have to do with servicing your contracts or servicing your customers and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think there is a move. I just don't know that it's going to be maybe as fast as people think, and we're seeing certainly inflation slowing, wage inflation slowing.
Yeah.
So you're going to start to see an equilibrium there. And I think the Asian economies are obviously motivated to protect that wage differential, or that economic differential. So anyway, those are all the things that are kind of involved in making that total landed cost or total value proposition of nearshoring. So a lot more involved than just that 5% margin.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think everything that Sean said was absolutely correct. Like when I first read that article, I was like, there's no way that it's a 5% difference, right? Because you got to look at the cost of labor. And I look at this kind of around the world. I've actually checked out manufacturing facilities in India. Why? Because their cost of labor is about $200 a month, right? Whereas in China, it's about $500. So it's twice, it's more than 2 times the difference. And then in Canada, it's somewhere around $1,600, right? Somewhere around there for minimum wage. So just that, in terms of labor costs, there's no way to get that down. On top of that, there's supply chain, right? So in Shenzhen, the reason we're there is because all of our suppliers are 1 hour drive away. 1 hour drive. And if you're looking at North America, if you want to find someone that supplies LED chips, you might be going somewhere like Texas. Or if you want to go for a PCB fabrication person, you might have to go somewhere else. And it's all dispersed across North America. I think if you look maybe 50 years ago, manufacturing was all in North America. It made a lot of sense, right? The supply chain was there. Now it's not there. It's all offshored, right? So it's still hard to replace. So, and that's why I think in China, it's hard to go anywhere besides China because of the supply chain, right? Even if we were to move our plant into India, we got to ship all these components from China to India. That doesn't make sense. Sorry.
The other thing too is if you want to look at where most of the automation investment's going, it's in China. They're automating faster than any other geography in the world because they recognize that wageflation is causing them,
Right.
that economic disparity, or the disparity is now becoming a lot smaller, and so they're recognizing that they need to automate because they have the same concern about wages in terms of the total cost of the product as we might have in the nearshore.
I think that my perspective is different. I look at the world from a different corner. So if just remember, I'll be biased towards startups and towards medical devices. And I think contract manufacturing, just like design and development, starts with a list of requirements. So understanding what the requirements are around your manufacturing really dictates the big question. Do you go offshore or do you stay local? And many times I think the answer is combinations. I also somehow resonate with what Jimmy said, but it actually brings me to the opposite answer. So we are a contract manufacturer here, and we also like to be about an hour drive from all of our subcontractors, which keeps us on shore. So it really, the requirements are, in my world, the requirements are to keep the NPI, the new product introduction process, as close as possible to the engineering source, because in the first 2-3 years, you are basically troubleshooting, and every little hiccup on the production line causes a full stop, an investigation, a correction. You want some of the design engineers to participate in the quick brainstorm around a production stop. You want to troubleshoot, you want to feed things back into design, quickly rev them up, and feed them back into manufacturing. Remember also, I work in a highly regulated area. You can't just, you're out of screws, you can't just give me those screws. It doesn't work like that. You end up in prison.
You need an FDA screw.
Exactly. So that is my perspective about contract manufacturing and medical devices and startups. I'd also say something about that 5% differential. I actually believe it. For plastics, I was tooling up in China before it became trendy. So about 15 years ago, I was making tools in China, and then doing early testing and early production over in China. But the tool was already designed to be shipped over and put on somebody's press local. And back then, we were doing stuff in China for 10% of the cost. So if you add shipping, Chinese holidays, the cost of non-quality, sometimes you get a piece of metal with the right paperwork, but it's not the right metal. So back then the cost differential was so high that it made sense to do that. Today it's kind of evened out. So even when you do long lead items like tooling for plastics, where the cost differential is maybe 50%, there's not enough space there to justify shipping, logistics, holidays, cost of non-quality auditing. We don't even audit our suppliers these days by ourselves. We outsource that. So we kind of walk the walk.
Yeah.
We outsource.
I think Jimmy agreed with you, but instead of bringing the contract manufacturer to him, he went to the contract manufacturer, did design integration right there in China.
I know the challenges.
And I agree with him, because nobody here can do what you need.
So there's no right answer, and it depends.
I guess is the answer.
Well, I think the key thing is
you
have to be where your manufacturers are during the first 2 years. So this the NPI phase, it's the new product introduction into a production line. You got to be there on a weekly basis. So I think if you're planning to be here in Canada, then you should find one in Canada, because that whole first 2 years, it's a painful process. And you know, we were at our manufacturers every week. We're still there every single week. We have engineers there just to make sure that all the products are being made properly.
We still have a large manufacturing presence right here at Don Mills in Eglinton, in Toronto.
Right.
One of the highest cost places in Canada, probably in the world. And there's still value that we can generate in Toronto, Canada, in terms of manufacturing.
Yeah.
So a lot of aerospace defense customers, solar started up here. Now we will ramp it up, cost reduce it, transfer it off, bring in new NPI, iterate, ramp it up, cost reduce it, move it offshore.
Sure.
I mean, we're going to continue to be the gateway.
So that sort of leads into, you know, if we're thinking earlier stage companies and startup companies, and you're wrestling with, you've come to terms that, yes, I need to outsource. I can't manufacture this on my own. There's no efficiency there. I'm not capitalized to it.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense for a whole bunch of reasons. So we're going to outsource. And then you have to say, well, I got to choose that outsource partner, and maybe it is the local guy to start or whatever. But how does that young, early stage company get the mind share of a contract manufacturing partners. So Mark, when you walked in with your, your little design and you've got, your real duct taped PC board layout, and you say, I want to build 50 of these, and they go, listen, like
We don't do duct tape. That's what they do. That's what they
we don't get up in the morning
supply
and
chain
think
duct
of 50, add 5 zeros to it and come back to talk to us. So how does a little company get to wedge their way in and do business with a contract manufacturer?
Right. Well, I would say the answer is like a lot of things that a startup entrepreneur has to do. One of them is networking. So, we were able to make some relationships early on into Celestica. We had met some of the business development people, and we had also met different, business development people or salespeople from some of the smaller local CMs. And as a startup, like you said, it's very hard. It's really hard to go to a Celestica, Flextronics, one of these big tier ones and say, all right, guys, I'm going to get you really excited. I'm going to build 50 of these things. They're going to change the world. I need like 60-day or 90-day, maybe 120-day credit terms, and we're going to build 50. And to be honest, unfortunately, early on, we didn't go to the tier ones, and honestly, even today, building in the hundreds of thousands, we still are not necessarily the right fit for a tier one. And we leveraged, there is quite a vibrant contract manufacturing community in Toronto. It exists mostly probably in the outlying areas like Markham. There are probably, 10 or 15 different CMs we talked to in the first year. Had some good experiences, had some bad experiences. It's like finding those fits and relationships to all those different facets of your business, and your CM is really no different. You really have to do a lot of homework, a lot of networking, but again, you have to sell yourself too, because you have to look at. I think one of the pitfalls of how you look at the CM is it really is a mutual relationship. You have to come to them and sell them a value proposition, and in turn, they're going to sell you on their value proposition. And initially, maybe a decade ago, I'd looked at, well, this is a service provider, and they should just cater to me, and I should go in there, and I'm going to say, look, I'm going to give you all this business. We're going to build hundreds of thousands of these. Aren't you guys excited? But it really is, I think you have to look at it from the perspective of a more mutual relationship as well. And we still try to build some of those relationships with tier one CMs today, but it's something you build over the course of time.
Yeah.
I like that answer. I like that answer because I play on both sides of the equation, and I like the mindset of partnership rather than subcontracting. I think it's very important to involve every strategic entity along the supply chain in context and in helping the decision making at least one station above and one station below, because there is influence from all these little spots on the supply chain or the food chain, and it used to be the mindset used to be kind of keep everybody in the dark. That's 20 years ago, and I think today everybody understands that the more you involve your contractors as partners and help them help you make your decisions, the more beneficial it becomes to everybody, including the idea that sometimes you have to add a certain manufacturing process and
invest in it.
And you can go to your supply chain and say, hey, this is what we will need in the next 2 years. Would you consider adding that inside your environment, because you've already got the infrastructure, you've got the ERP system, you've got so this is really, I think modern day outsourcing is very, very collaborative at its heart by almost by essence. It's not just strategic. That's how it should be. That's how you create value, by collaboration.
I think we call it the electronic manufacturing services industry, it used to be, contract manufacturing is kind of an antiquated term in some sense, because it implies consigned material. Large companies would consign the material, so all the inventory cost was then held by the OEM, and they basically dictated what was done every day, and it became a labor and equipment balance sheet kind of a transaction, right? So the contract manufacturer was the dumb CM, and the OEM had all the knowledge. They imparted the knowledge, and you became sort of labor and capital. That's evolved over the last probably 15 years into now I mean, the full evolution of an EMS partner is somebody that basically takes care of everything but your brand, your sales channel, and your IP, because those are the three things that a company is valued for. And it's cyclical innovation. You talked about staying 6 months ahead of your competition, right? The rest of that is a cost. Is a cost in the, and there are some companies that will, a lot of the companies in Germany, they see their manufacturing process as a part of their value, right? And so they don't give that up. And there's a lot of innovation happening in manufacturing in Germany under the Industry 4.0 initiative and other things to automate. But you'll see EMS providers like Celestica, the tier ones now, doing control towers where they actually manage inventory, visibility of inventory, right through the supply chain. They'll handle all your demand signals from your sales direct from the sales channel. So you set up the sales channel, step back, and it just flows. The signals go in and the products go out. I mean, that's where it's getting to, emerging from labor and capital equipment all the way to we take care of your brand for you, and we're the brand behind the brand.
But I guess the challenge for some of the smaller companies is before you even get a product manufactured, you have a prototype. You walk into Celestica and say, hey, I've got this prototype. It's pretty awesome, but I need you to make 50 pieces.
So where Celestica would Celestica or Flex or Jabil or any of these guys would be interested is it has to have a strategic fit. If you're an early stage company and you're seed, just your 50K or your first 500K or your first really meaningful round, you're really not a bankable entity. You have no credit. There's no history, right? So you're being viewed somewhat as a risk in terms of the opportunity cost of attention for a startup. So there has to be a fit there. And you talked about partnership. There has to be a long-term expectation that this relationship is going to be longer than just whatever it is we can contract for in the early stage. So. Where tier ones start to want to deepen their innovation platforms within segments, they will seek out startups to help create deal flow for themselves and for their customers. So if the startup here wants to ultimately have an exit strategy of acquisition, a tier one EMS player could provide a vehicle for that. Right,
so is that the right time for a startup to actually start looking at
I would say,
tier ones?
sorry, I didn't really answer your question, but you mentioned there's a small contract manufacturing service economy even in the Toronto area in Markham, and there's one or two out in Oakville, and we know a lot of them because they're run by former Celestica employees who started them up when we became smaller, and friends with most of them, and they do provide a service. I mean, you can get your prototypes. Those 50 are done, and the CEO of that company will put them in the back of his van and drive them over to you. I mean, that's the kind of service that you can get from those guys. And we're not saying that we're providing that service because that's not kind of our place. But there will come a point where there'll be a natural sort of evolution out of that as you grow, and you're going to need to move up the food chain relative to your provider, right? And I don't think there'll be any bad blood with the smaller guys. They realize that that's a natural exit point, right? And so we don't necessarily compete in that space. The only place we would is where we see that a startup has something that is highly valued to our customers and their end markets, and we'd want to partner in a way that makes sense relative to that startup's exit strategy and how we can help them, get to that exit point, whatever that is. So. And our competitors have figured out, like Flex has got an offering, and Jabil does some things.
Celestica and other companies your size are actually opening up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, you've been trying to open up, and open like a nuisance department, and keep people in the pipe, help them grow and help them, because you meet them at the door, they're not fit for you, but you'd like to keep them around, which makes sense for everybody. So as you grow your capacity to actually deal with the smaller guys and help them nurture them along, then they'll become your customer.
Right, and we want to be innovative too, and we want to be part of what I call the innovation markets, right? So the markets where innovation, entrepreneurialism happens. So I'm very passionate about that. Obviously, I've worked together in supporting Remap, which is an entity that tries to commercialize innovation from early stage right through, including early stage technologies, TRL level 3, 4, where they're really not even commercially viable yet, and nurture those through the ecosystem. So we've started a not-for-profit company that and you're part of that, Lahav, as well as I, in supporting that. So, we're constantly looking at ways where we can reach back and engage with early stage companies. I'm obviously here today. I've met a lot of the practice leads here at Mars and met with a few of the startups as well, just to understand more about what are your problems at each stage and what makes sense that for us to be able to engage, right? Because we do see the fact that our future is going to be linked to our ability to innovate and to be innovative, and often that injection of the entrepreneurial mindset is just what we need for kind of an older company like ours.
There's another aspect of this that needs to be highlighted, and that is for contract manufacturing of lower volumes.
Right.
Because a lot of what's going on here is high volumes, and then you have that problem.
Yeah.
But
high volume, low mix versus low volume,
high
mix.
variety,
Sure.
high mix.
So,
And for that, for the ecosystem locally, whether it's Toronto or in Erlangen in Germany or in the States and various places, you have contract manufacturers like a Kangaroo, not dissimilar to a Kangaroo, that cater to where the cost structure is not so much on cost reduction per component, but it's more cost reduction around logistics, quality, or managing quality and so on. And the quantities are a few hundreds or a few thousands of something per month, and it's in the assembly, it's in the testing, it's in the full service, the packaging, the shipping, and so on, the labeling. So again, it's a case by case, and the requirements around manufacturing are the most important thing that a company, I think, needs to evaluate. Just like when you start designing, you write up your list of requirements and you take extra time to make sure that your requirements are right. I think for contract manufacturing, it's the same. Start with your requirements and then figure out who to reach out to.
Yeah, good. I mean, I have a battery of questions here that I could keep firing at these guys, but this is also about you, and there's, the floor is open for any questions from your side that you might want to air. So welcome.
Hi. Okay, so my question is more targeted to Jimmy, but anybody on the panel can answer. I'm open to everyone's feedback. So it's around the topic of outsourcing your contract manufacturing overseas. Now, I know it was kind of loosely talked about. I was hearing some thoughts around issues concerning cost and quality control. But what I'm interested to know is if you have any other ideas or thoughts around what a startup might face in terms of advantages or challenges that they may deal with outsourcing their production overseas. And also, the second part of the question, I wanted to know if you had any thoughts around trends that you're seeing when it comes to companies, like against all small startups wanting to produce wanting to produce their products overseas with the help of a contract manufacturer overseas outside of places like India and China. Like if you are thoughtful of any other countries that one can maybe possibly look into as well.
Okay, so I guess contract manufacturing for most hardware startups, it's one of the big challenges because you might have a prototype, but you'll approach these contract manufacturers and no offense to the big guys, but most of them, they just shut the door in your face and they say, come back to us when you reach 1 million products per month or something like that. With the smaller guys, you take a tour of their factory and you're like, is this where my product is going to get made? It's like, oh my goodness. But the small guys, they're willing to work with you. And I think, we spoke about it briefly, but I think there's CMs of different tiers, different levels. And you just got to, I see it sort of like a marriage, and sadly enough, this is a really terrible analogy, but maybe it's like when you're poor and you got nothing, you got to find someone that's kind of willing to work with you, right? And as you move up, like sometimes you might grow out of that contract manufacturer. A lot of times that does happen. What happened, actually, our first contract manufacturer, the first, after knocking on so many doors, we finally found one that was willing to work with us. But then we realized that we actually had to do a lot of hand-holding, right? So this is where, is it even making economical sense? Because we were actually finding people to put there to make sure that all the production materials were coming in properly. This is, It's the PMC role, Production Materials Control. We were actually doing that for the factory. And then there's liability issues where, hey, we were the ones that purchased the parts. If there's a problem with the parts, whose fault is it? Right? So we realized, you know what, this isn't going to work. We need to work with someone that's more mature, someone that actually has processes in place. So eventually we had to move. And of course, moving manufacturers is a bit of a nightmare, but we got through it. But for a startup, it's not easy. It's not easy to find someone that's compatible. And luckily for us, you know, we really convinced them that, hey, we're making these really, really energy efficient light bulbs. We want to really make a difference. We want to keep bringing the cost down, and eventually we're going to sell a lot of these. And the manufacturing partner that we work with, he really, like, we had shared kind of the same vision, and he was like, you know what, I'll work with you guys. Well, I'm kind of diversifying my product line, so why not, right? And so far they've been great, but it's definitely challenging. And I think you were asking about trends in the industry, and I think a lot of contract manufacturers, they're seeing the trend that all these startups are popping up left, right, and center, and investors are feeding money into this ecosystem. So they're all starting to open the doors to, you know, smaller companies with innovative products and giving them a chance, right? And some of these guys, you know, these bigger kind of factory owners, when they see that they have, you know, a couple kind of big brand names really dominating their supply chain, their whole assembly line, they're like, hey, I got to diversify. Otherwise, if this customer leaves me, I'm screwed. So they'll start picking up smaller companies as long as you can convince them. But you got to really sell it to them that, hey, this is really going to work. Let's work together, and because it's a big investment on their part as well.
Thanks, Jimmy.
I'll add culture and time zones as a big risk. So it's not perceived as such, but it ends up as such.
Yep.
Because by the time you spend a full year, every night at 8 p.m., at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, having phone calls with Singapore, you're fed up. And you don't want to do it. And you ask yourself, why am I doing this again
Plus
and again?
you miss Jeopardy every night, maybe.
Right, so culture and time zones are a big one. One of the ways to overcome that is to work with companies that have global supply chains. So you get to enjoy the low-cost economy of offshore, but your point of accountability and your point of contact and your point of quality is here, right here in North America, on your time zone, and driving distance from your office. And I think that is a winning combination. A winning combination is to work with organizations that their business is to mitigate that time difference and culture difference and distance difference and quality difference for you. But they talk your language, and they're on your work hours.
Thanks, Lahav. Thank you. Next question.
Yeah, thanks guys, first of all. I just had a very tactical question. So let's say you know what you want to get manufactured, you draw up your list of requirements or whatnot. What do you guys then do to actually find, you know, first your big list of manufacturers, then a short list, and then finally who to go with? Is it just Alibaba, Google search, or sort of what do you actually do?
Are you talking about finding people overseas, or are you talking
or
about
even here?
finding
So
local?
like you talked about the ecosystem here.
So, you know, to get up and running, if you're just really getting off the ground, so first of all, talking to some of the guys at the tier ones is a good idea. Early on, we had a number of referrals to smaller, you know, single or two SMT kind of line shops, and those were from some of the tier ones. And I think you'll find it easier just to go on Google and go, okay, who are all the tier one manufacturers? A lot of them will have offices here, especially Celestica, I believe it's the headquarters here, and you can meet someone there. Or honestly, if you kind of drive around certain parts of Markham, like West Beaver Creek and 14th Avenue, you'll literally see
It's like Max.
just, you know, all, like there's probably 10 or 15 CMs just inside of that, maybe, you know, 5 kilometer radius. How you ultimately make the decision, you're gonna, you know, it's like evaluating any supplier or partner. You know, you go in there, you get a feel for how they're gonna work with you, you ask them for maybe for some references, you know, say
You do audits. You do audits.
Yeah.
You audit people.
You know, go say, who are you billing for? You know, go talk to those people. Were they happy? But ultimately, it is going to be a bit of a risk. The very first time that I engaged a CM about a decade ago with the previous company, it was a disaster. And it was a disaster for a year until we woke up and realized it wasn't the right fit, our expectations and the CMs were misaligned. And you also have to not be afraid to kind of hit the reset button and go elsewhere. I've probably gone through about 3 or 4 of the CMs locally here, and I'm actually back at one of the first ones we had. So, don't be afraid. What the companies are going to offer changes over time, and also your needs change over time as well.
There are in Toronto, and again, ex-Celestica employees who will provide as a service the concierge service the question you're trying to answer, that's what they do. Also, Canadian manufacturers and exporters is there to represent the manufacturers in Canada. You can contact them and they'll probably help you out with, well, here's the list of all the contract manufacturers in Canada, and they might even be able to help you with, they may have some boutique or niche capabilities that might fit more closely with what you're looking for. So that way it whittles down the list to 3 or 4 to call versus, oh my goodness, I got 100 guys to call, I haven't got that much time.
Sorry, I missed the name. What was the name of the
Canadian manufacturers and exporters, CME.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would actually ask a different question, because I think many times startups don't have the toolkit in order to do their evaluation. So maybe I would ask, how do I find somebody who can hold my hand and help me look at these manufacturers and then help me through the checklist of how to choose? So you need to hire a consultant that has experience in contract manufacturing, and they will guide you through the process. Otherwise, you won't know what you're looking at.
And they will know exactly what works and what doesn't work with contract manufacturers because they were on the inside.
And you've heard that some of these people are ex-Celestica, so now you know who to go to.
Please. Thank you.
Gentlemen, great panel. 2 questions for Jimmy. One, if you think of contract manufacturing life cycle where there are various stages, and if you own everything, you're an OEM, where do you see Nanoleaf, say, by 2016? So you got this year and next year. Given where you started, where are you in that life cycle in terms of getting your value proposition altered, change, where you're going to show real value to people? And then the second part of that, being in China, I'm curious, in 2015, never mind the preconceptions before, what does brand differentiation and especially brand loyalty mean now in Asia, and how fleeting or how long-lasting is it?
Okay, so I guess as a consumer products company, we're really focused on developing the products, right? So mainly focused on R&D. We actually we spent the last year in China because manufacturing is the most important part of a hardware company. So we built that foundation, but about 3 weeks ago, we just moved back into Canada to expand our R&D team, because we need to continue to innovate and create products that are special to both contribute to the value of our brand and our company. But we're going to still maintain our office in China, mainly to support manufacturing, work with the CMs to do the MPI, as well as the fulfillment of the orders. As we grow, though, I think by, let's say, 2016, 2017, hopefully we have a strong R&D workforce in Canada to continue pumping out products. Marketing and branding is a very important aspect. And what I'm learning is that it's actually the brand that really leads a company, that you have to make sure that the brand is representing the right thing. And for us, it's all about creating the most innovative and energy efficient lighting products. And we want to continue to build on that.
More questions?
We have less than 3 minutes, so I want a couple of rapid fire quick questions so we can fit everybody in. Go ahead.
Wow, this one might not be one of them. So we have a company that manufactures hardware as well. We actually have manufactured in both Asia and in Canada, in Toronto. One of the problems we face is that in the beginning, a lot of time, the manufacturer have a lead time they come to us. And they always end up going much longer and many delays that they couldn't predict themselves. And this doesn't seem to be a factor whether it's in Asia or in Toronto. I just wonder, do you guys have any strategy how to mitigate that delay?
Just buffer that now that you're knowledgeable, predict that into your Gantt charts. You already know it's going to happen. That's the buffer that I would suggest you add to your planning.
Was the 2x factor, you think?
Is there anything you can control?
Based on your
double everything? Is
Yeah,
that
based on your
but-
experience, just plan accordingly. You can't change that.
I think there's 2 times of year. So in North America, it's Christmas time. There's going to be delays. In China, there's Chinese New Year, which is happening pretty much right now. Actually, this weekend it starts. Any order that wasn't in probably 2 weeks before Chinese New Year, good luck getting it until April. So it's you got to manage that time of year, and sometimes you just have to learn it the hard way and plan it out in your Gantt chart.
Yeah, I'm not joking. I mean it. You know it.
Part of the problem is in the beginning, you know there's delay, but then some manufacturers delay much more than the other ones. But by the time you find out they were not as accountable as they are in the beginning, you already committed this much money, like 30% of your production money in, and that prevents you from switching. Is there a better way to avoid that?
Switching contract manufacturers is a very, very difficult process.
That's crazy.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult.
You could have a couple of
You have to
guys
not be afraid
named
to do
Guido
it.
on your payroll that go and visit them, maybe, but no,
It's a very, very
It's
difficult
expensive
process.
for the contract manufacturer and for you. There's
Yeah.
you
Choose
know,
your
onboarding
contract
and offboarding
manufacturer.
costs are, and no contract manufacturer wants to incur those costs. So they're going to want to pick you as much as you're going to want to pick them. I think that's what you also heard from the OEM side here, right? That there needs to be a partnership there, because if there's not a partnership there, you're both going to lose, right?
I'd like to just ask you, how did you choose them? Because maybe it is like, the only way to
Alibaba?
really influence change is to deeply look at the choices we make ourselves.
I think part of being a startup is that
Do
you
you
don't really
understand
have
what
a
I'm trying to
choice.
say? Maybe you made the wrong choice.
But
Take a look at your selection process. Maybe you chose them for the wrong reasons. Maybe the writing was on the wall.
well, there you go.
But you
It's your
weren't
fault.
looking at it.
It's your fault.
Your experience is not unique. Let's put it that way.
In the interest of Swiss precision time, we're going to call it a wrap in terms of formal, but we're all hanging out here for a few minutes, so the folks that wanted to ask a question, please, okay, we'll fit in a real quick one and we'll call it a wrap.
I
It's
just
like a
want to know
Luxembourg.
what you guys think about tooling in China and then manufacturing in Canada, because that's the highest cost for me at this point. I'm tooling in China, and I was going to manufacture in China. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But
Did you choose both partners? Did you choose your injection?
yes, I did. They're
here?
separate from each other. So
That is a bad move.
okay, thank you. But I think it works for me in the sense that I got a different costing for tooling from different people. So I know what I'm doing with tooling because that's kind of family business, and then manufacturing is handled by someone else because we cannot manufacture in our own existing.
When you're saying manufacturing, you mean the actual injection processing.
molding, yes.
The cost of anything is hidden in many, many little crevices along the line. There's a thing called total cost. The tool is not your main cost.
Total landed cost.
Right.
Yeah. The tool is not your main cost. So I'm happy to hear that you've got the tooling cost all figured out.
Right.
I would say in hindsight, we always say hindsight is like, it's not a big deal. So for the next time, or if you can, it's very difficult to take a tool out of China and put it in North America if you haven't planned it. There are companies who can do that for you, and they will build your tool and test it in China with the intention of bringing it to a specific injector here in Canada. That would be a recommended way to go.
Thank you so much.
Jimmy, Mark, Sean, Lahav, thank you. And thank you everyone for attending.